Welcome back to 23 Minute Reads with me, Maya D. This is kind of like my virtual book club because in these short videos, I share with you my takeaways from my current reading. Right now, that is Giving Life to Movement. As a part of my 23 to 23 challenge, I'm reading 23 minutes per day, every day, as an action of self-love, as an investment into myself, and as a way of providing myself with some consistency in an ever-changing world. Hoping that you will join me along in this journey by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and dropping some comments down in there in the comment section so there's an actual dialogue going on. Having in mind that while I have several decades of experience as a dancer, an educator, and a curriculum writer, I am not the know-all-be-all for this book. I'm simply providing a space for dialogue. Guess what? Hey, that's the author right there. Well, some of you might be wondering why it's a 23 to 23 if we're already in 23. Great question. Well, the answer is at the beginning of 2022, I asked myself, how many books can you read by the end of 2023? And here's where we are. This is actually the 10th book that I've read since the beginning of 2022. And this week I read pages 55 through 103. Let me get my notes so I can give you my 3 takeaways. Feel free to go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel, Maya D Specialist, while I'm getting these notes. And drop a book in the comments below just so that I know who's here with me. Takeaway number 1 is expression. On page 54 of the book, we find these words. The dancing voice is the essence of expression. What stands out to me is William's ability to express across and through various forms. At this point, Williams has already stated that this technique, Sylvester technique, filters into other aspects of her life off of the dance floor, and that also studying this technique can be applied to other dance forms. What I'm reminded of is that thing, how this expression, this very clear expression coming across in her writing. It reminds me of Dr. Halifu Osumari's book, right, Dancing in Blackness. And in the beginning of the book, someone notes that the author's words seem to dance across the paper and that the author seems to dance through history. I'm getting that same kind of feeling as I read Williams' book, as she seems to express in many different forms and to many different people. So last week, I mentioned the accessibility of this book due to its use of common language. What do I mean by common language? I mean the way that we're talking to one another right now. You understand what I'm saying. And if I say something you don't understand, you're going to drop it in the comments below so that either myself or someone can help us get to a clear understanding. Now, common language is a little different than academic language, this stylized writing form and language that it's used in journals and so forth, and is accessible to a certain group of people. This book uses common language, the way that we're talking to one another, therefore giving access to a greater audience and ideally having a stronger impact. This week, I would like to draw attention to how Williams finds connections between the methods practiced in the Sylvester dance class and education scholar Motson's style of instruction. Now, this is not to say that making that connection validates Sylvester technique, because Sylvester technique is already valid. It's valid because it is, simply put. Right. This is to say that this type of connection helps to make a connection. This connection helps to make a connection. How can I say that differently? I see this as a type of scaffold that supports additional information. There we go. So if you're a dance educator that's familiar with Motson's styles of learning, then Williams' explanation gives you a way to include Sylvester technique into the framework of information that you already have and to build new knowledge. Yeah, I think I like how I said that. Takeaway number 2 is message. On page 76, we find these words. Here's a quote. The dancer should not kill the message with the physical ability of the body. In other words, The technique itself should never have more importance than the message the dancing body is delivering. The audience should see the message delivered and not the pose. End quote. I feel that this idea is lost in some dance forms, and we see dancers mindlessly shifting through different poses and different positions with little to no contextual knowledge about the positions, the poses, the actions, and the gestures that they're conveying. The author offers these words. Here's another quote. Sylvester technique is not a series of exercises, but instead a conversation with symbology and expression, end quote. So here's what I offer to that. I say that combination of the symbology and expression is what constitutes a successful transmission of a message. The clear transmission of the message. On page 84, we're reminded that it is important to understand the actions, not just the shapes. This type of thinking encourages the learner to make connections, and those connections, by making those connections, the learner, the dancer, the mover, is building knowledge. The author notes that the classes also start with this internal scan. So just from reading the book, once again, if you have experience with this in your own lived experience, please add into the conversation so that we're all growing together. So here's what I gather. Internalization that happens at the beginning of the class via visualization leads to embodiment, which is the opposite of imitation. So imitation is just striking poses. It's repetition. It's the lowest level of the learning process. But from the beginning of this technique, you're encouraged to tap into higher order thinking that supports embodiment, which supports that clear transmission of the message. Because the mover, because the dancer understands the message that they're conveying, the concepts, they are better able to convey the message. Yeah. That's what I'm gathering. Takeaway number 3 is terms and positions. Starting at page 87, we find the terms and positions section, and it includes terminology and images. So there are 2 things that I really appreciate about this section, and I feel both of them are continuing that idea of accessibility of the information. The first is the type of language used to define a terminology. Williams uses a combination of Western dance terminology and common language, creating a bridge between the two. Once again, that common language. So some people are walking into reading this book coming from a dance background, and they're going to have that information. So you want to speak to them, and some people are not. So by Williams providing both, she's closing the gap between those words. Second are the images. As a kinesthetic and visual learner, the images and practice are vital to my understanding, my comprehension of content. The inclusion of the images helps to deepen my understanding of the concept. But wait. I have a third one. I just thought of this one. The placement of where these are coming in the text is also really great. I appreciate this section being in the middle of the book because some of you might have had this experience too. You're reading through a book and you come across a term that keeps coming up in the book, but in order to define that term and find the explanation of that term, you have to flip to the end of the book to go through the glossary. That's not the case in this book. It's right in the center. So in this book, you're introduced to the concept of Sylvester technique and then offered terminology and explanations before you take a deeper dive. So it's like this nice progression of information. So what I'm saying is I like the flow of this book. It's dancing. The book itself is dancing. I also like that you've stayed to the end, and I hope that by now you've dropped some comments in down there below, some questions. maybe some suggestions of some future books. Remember to like, subscribe to this MyD Specialist channel, spread a good word, stay blessed, and I'll see you again soon.